Hi, everyone. Michael Anfield here. Thank you for joining me. So we're going to start uh, in about 5 minutes or so. We're just waiting for people to come on and see if Mango is coming on. So he's just getting started and set up. And I'm going to, like always, just announce a few things, and then we'll get on with the broadcast. So if Mango is on the line, just like to see if he's on here. It's pretty simple to actually log in, and it's pretty simple once you click the link. So just bear with us for a few moments and we'll be starting in a moment. So the weather was pretty nice today, about 20, 21 Celsius out there. Pretty nice. Like it a bit warmer, like 25 at least, 23, 24, 25. But it was pretty nice. Can't complain. Doing a lot of work studying through udemy.com. I'm also learning. So it seems like Mango has a little difficulty trying to get on to the chat. So just bear with us for a few moments and we're going to get him on. And today's just going to be a podcast, not a webinar, so you won't see any videos because Mango's video is not, his internet connection is not that great, and mine isn't the best either. So just trying to figure this out, why he's not able to connect for whatever particular reason. Yes, it seems like Mango has difficulty coming on the call. The link that I sent him doesn't seem to be working for some reason. So just bear with us for a moment until we get Mango on. So before Mango comes on, let me just go through a few announcements and we shall see. So he will restart his computer and come back. There is a technical issue, unfortunately. These things do happen. We live in an imperfect world. So that's just life, baby. That's just life. So announcements are, as you probably know, and I'm going to be announcing these for the next, few months. As you know, I have a newsletter, and you can subscribe to that newsletter by going over to my website at weareinterconnected.com/newsletter. And there you can get my free interactive ebook, The Guru's Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. It's a very, very, very short ebook, interactive ebook, mainly for new vegans or new people transitioning to veganism. So that is available on my website, as well as the paperback version of How to Create the Perfect Vegan Life. And that is for vegans at any stage of their journey. And it really talks about how we can avoid burnout while trying to promote veganism part time or full time while earning some income to do what we love, which is to spread this message of love and compassion. And it's a real great book. It's a very short book. I like writing short books. I don't like writing long, books. People have low attention spans, and we need to just get the message out, baby. So, what else is up? Oh, my newest book, the third book and the final book in the series of the interconnectedness of life. So the first was the interconnectedness of life, and the second is the lost love. And then the third book and the third and final book is Our Path to Freedom, how we can live a freer and more peaceful life. And it really does go again into the idea of love and into the idea of positivity. But more than that, it talks about, the corruption within within politics and within our culture, specifically Western culture, and how there's elite Illuminati running the whole show, and getting people to understand that, while at the same time still focusing on that love issue. Uh, so seems like Mango is here, but he's not yet connected with us. There seems to be an issue. Sorry, folks, for the delay here. We're gonna hopefully start very shortly. So just bear with us for a few moments until we get Mango on the line. Sorry about the delay, everyone, again. We're going to get Mango as quickly as we can on the line. He's having difficulty connecting. Again, apologize for the delay, the technical issues that he's having. Today is just going to be a podcast and no video because he does not have the greatest of connection. And it seems like uh, there's an issue. Oh, okay. So it seems like he doesn't have Google Google Chrome installed. I'm not sure if you need Google Chrome or not, but it seems like you probably do need Google Chrome to access. So he's going to come on the line once it is done installing Google Chrome. I I thought it worked with any browser, but I guess it only works with Google Chrome browser, the YouTube Live. But but we'll see. So other things that's happening in my life. I'm still in Quebec, Canada, and unfortunately, it's still somewhat cold here on certain certain days. It's June, but it's still cold. We did have good weather last week. Very good weather, about 20, at least 25, 30 degrees. It was very nice. And we were working out in the orchard, in the land that we have there in the orchard, and doing a lot of planting and a lot of gardening work, which was really great. And it's about the place that we go to is about 13 kilometers, where um, we have the land, which is I think about 15 or 20 acres, and I'll be here for a while anyways. But my aim is really to move permanently to the tropics. I'm thinking of Costa Rica, and it's very good there for fruit, very good there for like overall for vegans and vegetarians to live there. There are a lot of connections and a lot of communities, vegan communities there. So that is great. And so that is my aim actually to move, eventually move there permanently and to get things going there. Hopefully, either join a existing community or to create my own with my friend, with a friend of mine. But we'll see what happens. I can't say too much about the future because you never know what the future holds. But that's what's happening. I'm here right now. I have released already three new books. As I mentioned, Our Path to Freedom is the latest one. It's the sequel and the trilogy, sequel and the final book in the trilogy of the interconnectedness of life. Then there is then there is How to Create the Perfect Vegan Life in paperback, and then The Guru's Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. That is part of the email newsletter. You get the free interactive ebook, which is great. So that is really all that's happening with me. I have a lot of things planned for the future, but I don't want to mention anything as of yet because, things change and who knows what happens for the future. So I don't want to mention anything until things are settled and ready. I plan to have courses coming out, free and paid courses. We got Mango on the line. Woohoo!
Hello.
I'm so happy. Hi, Mango.
Hi, Michael, at last.
Sorry about the
Um,
confusion and everything. I did not know you needed actually Google Chrome to be able to use this, but now I know, so I'll be telling the other guests for sure that they need Google
Good.
Chrome. So,
Yeah, that's it. That was the problem. I just couldn't get on with Firefox, but as soon as I've kind of installed my the Chrome here and signed on, everything's gone smoothly.
yeah, we can hear you perfectly. I just talked a little bit about, what I'm doing here and a little bit about the updates and, announcements that I usually do beforehand. Um, so thank you so much, Mango, for coming online. I'm going to introduce you before we start. So, Mango Wadzak has been an ethical vegan since the 1980s and has expanded the philosophy of veganism to embrace the notion of eating raw, along with the understanding that the only truly karmically free given food is fruit. He is the author of two books, Destination Eden and the Eden Fruitarian Guidebook, which delve deeper into the ahismic lifestyle, and third, which is an autobiography. So we're gonna talk, of course, a little bit about his books and his life, and go into the nitty gritty. And to learn more about Mango, we're gonna present his website, and hopefully at the end of the show as well. But they're all going to be in the video description, which is below the video in YouTube. So just after this broadcast is ended, shortly within, I would say half an hour, within an hour, the whole video should be uploaded. So his website, if you want to learn more about him, his website, and to get his books, which his book Destination Eden, second edition, is now released or published through Vegan Publishers. So Vegan Publishers is a fully 100% vegan publishing company. So you can get his book through veganpublishers.com, I believe, or on Amazon. His website is fruitnut, N-U-T, fruitnut.net. And without further delay, here is Mango Wadzak. Thank you, Mango, so much for coming online and agreeing to have this interview.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent,
Do
excellent,
we have
excellent.
many listeners?
We have some listeners, but usually not many. But there are many people that join us later on, watch the video through YouTube at another time. So let's
Sure.
start
Well, it's
because
like
it's already
3 o'clock in the
25 minutes.
morning in Europe. Sorry, I interrupted.
It's 25 minutes in, so we're gonna start right away. So, how was your day, Mango? Like, what is life like in the neck of the woods where you're at?
Well, we're coming up to the solstice now, which means that the days are getting shorter and slightly colder. Of course, nothing in comparison to how it is in Northern Europe or other places in the world. But still, it can get pretty nippy in the mornings. Temperature's been dropping down to about 13 degrees at night time. During the day, it's in the mid 20s. So we're getting nice sunshiny days. I'm out in the garden most mornings. I also have gotten into the habit in the last few months of going for an early morning swim. I generally swim about 200 meters at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's pretty nippy out there. Then I mean,
What kind of
so it's a bit of a challenge.
what kind of water or lake or something do you swim in?
We have a small dam that's next to the house, and it's about 10 meters across from one side to the other. So I swim back and forth uh, 10 times there and 10 times back. That's about 20 times. It's about 200 meters all up. I'll do that every morning, early in the morning. Wakes me
Uh-huh.
up, and
That's excellent.
yeah, yeah, I feel it's good for me.
Right. And so people want to know about your books. So tell us why you started writing and a little bit about your journey with your first book, writing, and tell us how that all came to be till today.
Okay. Well, around the turn of the millennium, I found myself in Bangkok. Not in Bangkok specifically. Actually, I was in Southeast Asia, and spending a lot of time in Sumatra and Malaysia and Thailand as well. And now I ended up living in Krabi for a while, and I started. Uh, so I thought to myself, I should write down some of my insights that I've had over the past decade or so. So I started writing on paper, and shortly after that, I met these Buddhist monks who I talked with on a daily basis, and they told me, you should come and use our computers. We have many computers in the monastery. You can start using them and write what you feel there. So that's that's what I did. I took the bits of paper I had and I went into the monastery and I started visiting them every day, writing down my thoughts, and trying to get sort of well, at the time when I first started writing it, I had the idea of a title of Destination Eden from one of my books, but it was semi autobiographical as well as containing the insights that I had. And over time, it grew so large that I had to really separate the two of them and make Destination Eden purely about the philosophy of doing less harm through adopting the fruitarian lifestyle. So that was really how it all got started. There was a long period of time where I didn't write anything at all because once I left Thailand, I just had so many other things to do and was always kind of around everywhere that I completely pushed it aside, put it on the back burner as it were, and left it until later. And it wasn't until 2013 that I finally got my act together and began reading through what I'd already created and uh, kind of putting the books into the formats that they are today. So Destination Eden, which was only published in 2013, took much of what I'd written back in the year 2000, and it also took out a lot of what I'd written back then, which is now incorporated in my biographical work. That's how it all
Wow.
started for me with the writing. Yeah.
Wow. And tell us a little bit about your journey of meeting your wonderful partner and Květa, and also moving to Australia. How was that?
That was something which I'm incredibly thankful for. It's been a dream come true, really, for me to be here. I had lived in Australia for nearly 3 years uh, at the end of the 1990s before I left to Southeast Asia. And when I left Australia at that time, I felt a little bit heartbroken because I really loved this place and didn't want to leave. But because of immigration laws, they made it virtually impossible for me to stay. So when Květa, my loving partner, eventually found me via my website, this is back in the year 2005, I think it was. She was Googling fruitarians in Australia and she found my website and assumed that I was living somewhere here in Australia. So she was very excited because she'd been an ethical fruitarian for some time. She'd never met anybody else that was, and she just felt like there was a connection there. So she wrote to me full of kind of enthusiasm, thinking that, oh, we'll meet each other soon because we just living down the road from each other, perhaps. And it turned out that I had actually, at that point in time, I was living in Spain and had given up all hope of ever returning to Australia. And she kind of was telling me that I should come back, I should come and join her, which after a lot of hesitation on my side, I finally decided that why not? Let's see what will happen. So I arranged with her, first of all, to meet in Thailand. We spent a few months together, both in Thailand and also in the Czech Republic, which is where she's from. And after that, she said, we'll come back to Australia and we'll try and make it work. So we did that. And I ended up getting permanent residency in 2009. So up until that point, I always felt very uncertain about whether I was going to be staying there or not, whether they would let me stay. Immigration here is very, very difficult, and they're well. It's well known that when people try and get in on a de facto relationship basis, that they can sometimes be very what's the word? Just really kind of in your face and want to make sure that the relationship is legitimate. But we had a really beautiful case officer who looked after us both, and that process, although it did take nearly 3 years, went reasonably smoothly. So now I'm an Australian citizen, which is a great relief for me that I don't have to leave here for the rest of my life. Probably I don't see myself going anywhere, and I'm very, very thankful of my loving partner for for insisting that I join her here.
What a lovely story.
Yeah,
And I thank
yeah,
you both for doing the wonderful work that you're doing for the animals and for our beautiful earth. Because without your books, I mean, there are probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that really, I mean, I certainly am very inspired by what you do, the work that you do, and most certainly, probably uh, many others are as well. The first time I ever, I mean, I was definitely following, eating more fruit, during the first, few years that I became vegan. By
yeah.
2011, I was eating, a lot of fruit. And when I stumbled upon your book, the first book, I was like, wow, this guy really does, the author really does talk a lot about the ethical and spiritual aspects of fruitarianism, and I didn't really understand it until I read your book, and I'm like, aha, that's how it is. So really, uh, having that moment and having your words like permeate my mind and heart. That's such a blessing, and thank you so much for that. And I
Well,
want to talk to you now about your vegan and fruitarian journey and how. Tell us a little about. I mean, we know that you have the autobiography that you have written, which is, by the way, very a very good book, which we'll definitely touch on. But tell us a little bit about your journey to veganism a bit, and then to fruitarianism.
okay. First of all, I'd like to say I'm so very pleased that my book has touched you, actually, that you've found inspiration from it. It always really pleases me and touches my heart when people take the time out to tell me that. I am aware it is actually, my work is in many ways quite unique. I know there are a lot of books out there that talk about raw food and even fruit, but if there are any others, I'm unaware of them that are really kind of, well, I tried from my heart to touch on the ethical reasons for doing this, and as you've said, kind of show that it is a very spiritual path, really. Um, so I'm happy that you are able to understand my words, and that they've touched you the way they have. As for my own journey, it all began for me back in the 1987, I believe it was. I suddenly had a revelation, really, that all of my life I had been eating animals. Um, and even though I had been kind of aware, like everybody else, that if you're eating bacon, you're eating a pig, or if you're eating steak, you're eating a cow, or everybody kind of knows this. Intellectually, they know it, but they don't really know it in their heart. And that's what happened for me, that I suddenly realized it in my heart, what I was doing. I realized that I had been participating in horrendous acts of violence towards these animals, which, had I met personally, had they ever come across to me, I would have been only kind of loving towards them. There's no way that I would have ever dreamt of of, of kind of looking around for a knife to end these beings, one of these beings' lives, just so I could eat them. The thought is horrendous, really, to me. And all my life, I had been taking part in this, what Melanie Joy calls carnism. It's a very violent ideology that eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary. And when I had that realization, it was not. It was not. I wasn't inspired by anyone or a book or anything really. I just woke up, really. Uh, I guess the time was right. There was a catalyst. There was something that made me feel um, that that I was that made me aware that I was behaving in the way that I was. But really, I just think that it was something that my body, my spirit was ready to embrace. And when I realized, I was on a bus home, and when I realized it, I just stopped eating all meat and fish. Overnight, I decided I just could not participate in that anymore. In a way, I felt like I had awoken from this violent nightmare and looked down at my hand and found that I had a butcher's knife in it that was covered in blood. That's how closely I felt like my my actions had been uh, really unaware violence that I've been participating in. So I quit completely eating all animals. Um, Initially, I was unaware, completely unaware, what goes on in the dairy industry. I was completely ignorant about eggs. I thought both of them were produced in some kind of manner that nobody was really hurt, and it was uh, it was okay to do that kind. I thought it was normal and acceptable still to do that. But because I was so enthused about being a vegetarian at the time, I started reading up, and I think it was Peter Singer's book Animal Liberation, which I read, was one of the first books that I read. And even though he himself never embraced veganism, his words in that book influenced me or made me realize that I had to also go further than just stopping eating uh, the flesh of animals, but had to also stop participating or financing all forms of animal exploitation. So within about maybe 6 or 7 months of becoming vegetarian, I became vegan and embraced that idea just as firmly as I had vegetarianism. And I knew it was a lifetime choice that I'd made, that I would never look back or never be one of these people that was um, that would one day say, "Oh, I used to be a vegan" or "I used to be a vegetarian." I knew that it would be something
Let me
that
just
I
stop you
would.
for a moment there because I like to put my sixth
Mhm.
sense in.
Yep,
But a lot
yep.
of
Please, yeah,
times
you go ahead.
people a lot of times they go back to eating animal foods, particularly because they don't have the ethics behind the their choices. So a lot of people maybe do it for their health or for losing weight or maybe for the environment, but they don't have that ethics and they don't understand, fully understand like what veganism is. Because when Donald Watson coined the term vegan in 1944, he came out with a newsletter called Vegan News in November of 1944, and he explicitly talked about the cruelty associated with dairy products. At that time,
Mm,
not many people were consuming eggs, and so he was mainly discussing the dairy industry and how there was, all this cruelty involved. And that's back in 1944 in November. And at the time, there was no set definition. And when Donald Watson left the Vegan Society, which he formed with a bunch of other people. And eventually, when the Vegan Society became a registered charity in 1979, that's when, or I think it was 1979, that's when they came up with the definition, the ethical definition. So go on with your story. So, first of all, that going from omnivore to vegan, that's in your first book. So talk a little bit about that and your journey to fruitarianism.
yeah, well, as I said, I became vegan in 1987 after a few months of being vegetarian, and throughout that whole time, I never met another vegetarian or knew of anybody else that was vegan. In fact, I don't think I'd heard of the word vegan until after I became vegetarian. Nowadays, I think that everybody kind of knows the word, but really back then in the 1980s, it was still very much early days, and I I was actually living in Norway at the time, and I had put out feelers as far and wide as I could to try and find or connect with somebody else in Norway who may have been vegetarian or vegan, but I never met anybody, and I feel quite strongly that it's very possible that at that time I could have been the only vegan that was living in Norway. I didn't know of any others. I contacted the Vegan Society in Sweden, which is the next door country, and they didn't. I don't think they had any other members that were in Norway. They only had Swedish members and Danish members and some people from other parts of the world, but they didn't have any members from Norway. So I could have been the very first one there. Um,
Wow.
I tried my hardest to explain to all my friends and colleagues at the time that why I had made the choices I had made, but none of them seemed to really understand it. Most of them just ribbed me about it and thought it was a joke and that I was getting a bit extreme. I lost count of the amount of times that I heard the word radical and extreme. I didn't mind. It was like really just ran off my back like water from a duck's back. I ran off, yeah, like water from a duck's back. So nothing really phased me when people criticized what I was doing. I felt very firm in my convictions, and I really tried to to explain it to some people who I thought were sensitive and who I thought would understand, but I was unable, completely unable. I don't think I converted anybody. There was nobody that was really interested. It wasn't until uh, maybe I think. Oh, actually, strangely enough, my sister, who is 6 years my junior, she became vegetarian almost at exactly the same time that I did. She was living in, I think she was in England at the time, but I'm not sure. She could have been somewhere else. She lived in a few different countries too, and she uh, uh, she and I became vegetarian unconnected with each other. We both decided it was the right thing to do. So we both kind of woke up to that at the same time. And we also both woke up to veganism at around about the same time too. So we both became vegan almost exactly the same time in 1987. Even though we didn't really have anything, we weren't well, we never saw each other because we were living in different countries, as I said. Um, It was not until 1992 or 1991 that I met first other person who was vegan, or people actually. I met several in that year. And in 1980, no, sorry, 1993, I met a Spanish fellow called Francisco Martin, who gave a wonderfully inspirational talk on the benefits of eating raw food. He was a vegan himself, very outspoken, very active about getting bullfighting closed down in Spain. He was a wonderful talker, and he gave this, as I said, a very inspirational talk about just eating raw food. And I had come across the idea in the previous year or two prior to meeting him, but I had never really given it much thought. I'd kind of dismissed it and laughed it off really, and just thought it was a little bit too much really. But when he started giving his small lecture, it's like every single word that he said just really touched me, and I felt, wow, this guy is making so much sense that immediately after his lecture, I decided that was it. I was going to cut out eating cooked food. Now, I would love to be able to say that I did that successfully, but alas, cooked food is incredibly addictive. And at that time in my journey, I found it very difficult to let go of eating cooked food. But I was eating a lot more raw after that time, and always had it in my goal to actually reduce completely or cut out completely all cooked food. So
So
I
when
knew
so
one
when
day
you
that I would,
yeah,
so I knew one day that I would accomplish that I would cut out all cooked food, even though I was unable to do it straight away. Um, yeah.
right.
Uh, uh,
So
uh,
when you went
uh,
raw, did you know about the power of fruit? Did you incorporate more fruit into it? Like, was it specifically fruit, or was it like gourmet raw and stuff like that?
no, no, I was not really. I didn't really have any fruit awareness at the time when he gave his talk, because Francisco also never really underlined anything about fruit. He was just talking about the benefits of eating raw as opposed to cooked. He was talking about enzymes and just how every creature on the planet eats their food the way nature offers it, and we're the only one that thinks fire can in some way enhance the food. And I think a lot of what he said, although it's many years ago, I never recorded it. I don't know exactly what he said. I just recall the feelings that I had when he gave his talk and thinking this was right. And he never underlined anything specific about fruit. It was not until 1 year later of eating predominantly raw, which for me basically consisted of eating an awful lot of salads and oranges and apples and things, because I was living still uh, in Northern Europe, and I, I kind of yeah, I'd been embracing it for a year, and then I met up with another fella, a very good friend of mine at the time, Anthony, his name was, is I should say. He and I were sitting on a beach in Spain, and we were philosophizing about uh, how fruit was the only real food which was actually given, that necessitated no violence towards anyone or any plant even. And when we talked about this, I'm not sure whether it was him that brought it up or myself, but we both agreed that fruit was the highest of all foods in a spiritual sense. That it was really kind of uh, it was like we both had an understanding that there was a symbiotic pact between the tree and the human, in that the the fruit is appealing on so many levels to all the senses, the color, the taste, the texture, just even the touch of it at times. uh, but and that appeal that the fruit has is something that's very, very deliberate uh, on so many levels, so that we and other species similar to us should find that fruit attractive, take the fruit away if it's particularly good. We will then nurture and look after the seed, or at least we take the fruit away from underneath the tree and discard of the seed somewhere else, so that it has this chance or a better chance of growing to be a tree in its own right, the seed. So this kind of realization uh, was something which we discussed and we realized, and it was at that point that I knew that I this was a path that I wanted to follow. I felt like this was really truly how we were meant to eat, and I'd always kind of wondered why it was that humans, for us, it's like so difficult if we're out in nature or if we're lost in the bush or somewhere, that we wouldn't know what to eat. Whereas it's like we don't have our home there. Whereas every other animal that lives there wouldn't have any problem finding its food, or his or her food, I should say. We don't have that same thing. You know, if we're out in the bush, it's very, very difficult for us to find food. We have to have a lot of knowledge how to do that. Most people would resort to eating animals. Um, Fortunately, I've never been in that situation where I have been stuck out in the bush, and I don't frankly want to be. But I think that part of what has happened with humans is that we've lost our environment, really. And if we could uh, once more go around planting fruit trees everywhere, then it wouldn't matter if we were lost out in the bush, because there would be fruit trees everywhere and we'd have our food to eat. But our food is been systematically sort of gotten rid of everywhere. So it's, I say
Mm.
systematically, this may have happened a long, long time ago. Maybe there was a Garden of Eden once, and uh, and there were fruit trees everywhere, so we always knew what to eat. And when we got cast out, there wasn't any more fruit around. So I think it's our duty, in a way, to try and recreate the Garden of Eden as much as possible and behave in a way which is compatible with the Garden of Eden. So the only real way that I can see to do that, to avoid harming or to cause as least harm, as little harm as possible, is by planting fruit trees and living off the fruit from those trees.
Wow,
So that's
that's
kind of how my
that's
journey started.
incredible. That's an incredible story and journey that you had, and until now, I mean, this is from 1987, and then about 1993, truly finding out that food was the only karmic-less food that could be harvested without or very little harm involved.
Mm,
And you just discussed about Eden, the Garden of Eden, and I truly believe that a place like that did exist, and that we were eating solely fruit, and we were compassionate and loving, and there was no, harmful non-human animals, and we were all living in harmony with one another. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy behind Eden fruitarianism and how that differs from fruitarianism or frugivorism.
yeah. Well, I see, because yeah, I should mention that I've coined my own term. It's Eden fruitarianism, which readers of my book will be very familiar with. And Eden fruitarianism, I want it to stand out from fruitarianism because fruitarianism has been hijacked and been used and abused by so many people now, rather like the term vegetarianism, which now for many people involves a diet that includes fish and chicken and goodness knows what else. Um, Whereas originally, probably vegetarianism was more likely to have been synonymous with a plant-based diet, a 100% plant-based diet. This is no longer the case. And sadly, with the term fruitarianism, I see the same kind of degeneracy happening with it. Whereas a lot of people now will call themselves vegetarian, and they'll state I'm a vegetarian because I'm eating 60% fruit or 50% fruit or 80% fruit. They have an arbitrary percentage, and that's what they consider to be fruitarian. So some people would be fruitarian in some people's eyes, whereas other people wouldn't be, whereas those other people would consider themselves fruitarian because for them the percentage is lower. I'm waffling a little bit
Right,
here,
but
but I wanted
but
to I wanted,
but
sorry.
but basically, uh, fruitarianism for you is more. Tell us about the ethics and the spiritual aspects behind that, because
Yeah,
fruitarianism is just basically a diet solely on fruit. But then again, of course, everybody, just like veganism now, people want to call themselves vegan and include eggs and all kinds of animal products. So tell us a little bit
yes.
about the ethics and spirituality behind your coining of the word.
Yeah. Okay. So Eden fruitarianism, for me, is not purely about food, just like veganism isn't. Veganism isn't a diet, and fruitarianism isn't a diet either. Eden fruitarianism isn't a diet. Eden fruitarianism is a philosophy which has a long-term goal of reinstating, or if people aren't comfortable with that word, creating Eden-like conditions on this planet. So the goal, it's an ahimsic philosophy, basically about trying to reduce harm as much as possible. And in terms of agriculture, I think fruit is the most, or rather, trees are the most sane way that we should be producing our food. So when people go out there and they plant fields and fields, or acres and acres, hectares and hectares of um, wheat or other types of cereal crops, they are causing an awful lot of destruction to the environment that's completely unnecessary. Whereas if we had fruit trees planted instead, we wouldn't need to be running the tractor over the land every week, and sorry, not every week, twice a year, as is done in conventional agricultural practice. Um, Things could be very different, and the more we can get so that people are growing their own fruit in their own gardens everywhere rather than living in cities as we're doing, the more we can reduce the harm furthermore. So the idea of Eden fruitarianism, and the idea may seem very far-fetched to a lot of people that we could ever create Eden-like conditions on this earth, because everybody knows that there is a balance in nature, and that balance in nature is extremely violent. A lot of people actually probably aren't aware of that, but it is. When you go out there in nature, it may seem like it's peaceful. It may seem like everything's beautiful and hunky-dory on a nice day when the sun's shining and you hear the birds singing, and you think that it's, really nice and just sort of beautiful, and everything's in balance there. And it's true, there is a balance and there is a beauty to it too, but there's also an awful lot of violence. In fact, uh, I think there's only a very, very small percentage, a fraction of a percentage of all life forms that are born which ever make it to full maturity. Very, very, very small amount. For the bigger the species is, like in terms of um, animal species, the more chance there is of the offspring actually making it to full adulthood. But the smaller they are, they fall victim to to other animals, just to the environment often. So, for example, you might see well, take cats and mice. People think the only way that you can keep the mice down, keep the mouse population down, is by having predators like cats, which will catch the mice and kill the mice. So this is part of nature and part of the balance of nature. But I personally believe that uh, that the essence of existence is about change. Everything is changing all the time. So why cannot things change to be more peaceful and more compassionate? So I envision a world where there could be a balance within nature, where it's not dog eat dog and live and let die, but a balance where everything is harmonious with with everything else, and nobody is out to get anybody else. Nobody needs to be watching their back when they go out anywhere, or there won't be anything that, or anyone who's got bad intentions towards somebody else.
I
And
believe that.
I think the pivotal um, the pivotal for what a catalysator for this to come to pass are is we humans as a species. If we can turn ourselves around and behave as if we were in Eden, I honestly believe that we can have a profoundly spiritual effect on the collective consciousness of all beings on this planet. So I think that it's possible. It will be possible long term if we can, first of all, um, change ourselves so that we are peaceful and loving, and looking out for ourselves and looking out for other animals and not wanting to do any harm. I think this will cause a change of consciousness, collective consciousness of other beings too. So eventually, the Isaiah prophecies will come to pass in the Bible, where it says the wolf who will lie down next to the lamb. Lions, and goats will be able to uh, graze in the field together, and there won't be any threat. I think, and I know that there is a lot of people that will ridicule this and think that it's nonsense, but instead of thinking it's nonsense, just, just, I think it would do everybody good to just think, well, okay, maybe it's possible, and what do we have to lose in trying to fulfill this prophecy? Because if we head in that direction of no matter what happens, it's going to today. So it doesn't really matter whether my vision is ever going to come to pass, even though I believe it strongly will do myself. I'm very, very optimistic about it. I don't really mind if people want to ridicule it, if they want to knock it. Uh, that's where they're at. I see that that's their choice in life. They're free to do that, but at least realize that if we were to move in that direction, we can pull ourselves out of so much of a quagmire that we're in at the moment, where we're really in dire straits. We are in the middle of a sixth mass extinction at the moment on this planet, where we're losing tens of thousands of species every week, I think. Maybe it's a month. I'm not 100% sure, but we're losing species on this planet at a horrendous rate. And I know that, I mean, I've seen quite recently and numerous times how of all the mammals on this earth, 60% of them are farmed animals, and
Mm.
36% of them are humans, and only 4% of them are animals which are still left in the wild. This is a destruction, a devastation beyond really comprehension, what we have done as a species to this planet. So
Hmm.
anything that we can do to turn this around and try and rectify the harm that we've caused, the harm that we've done to this planet. It has to be a good move, surely.
Wow, it's devastating. And once I understood this, like the first moment that I went vegan, it was like, wow, I can't like support the use and killing of animals. I don't want to even pay people to have, animal foods for my enjoyment, because basically that's all it is enjoyment and taste. So in the
Yeah.
Garden of Eden, and I really do agree and really do feel that your vision, and you do have in Destination Eden, you do have, I'm not sure, I can't remember where it is in the book, but it's part of the book where you talk about your vision and how you feel that that the world will be like, and you're very optimistic, which I really love because I am too. I really do believe that we're going to get, to this, peaceful utopia Eden world. Uh, and you talked about how, as it is in the Bible, the wolf shall sit down by the lamb, and all animals shall be, not afraid of one another. And I believe like there was a world at one point like Eden, similar to Eden, where no animal harmed any other animal. So you believe, I truly feel that that will happen in the future. So you feel that, because I think it was one of your books that mentioned how we should envision, for even just a few moments a day, envision the Garden of Eden in our minds. And that's absolutely very true, because when you envision something that profound in our minds and we strive to get closer and closer to that vision, just like if we are running a marathon and we're envisioning the finish line, uh, the more people that pray for that, the more people that actually practice and strive to get closer to there, that will most likely like lead us in the direction of the Garden of Eden. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I want to say one thing that you said there at the beginning was that you also share my optimism that such a vision
Yes.
will one day come to pass. And I want to say actually I think it's incredibly important to be optimistic, even if you don't think it's realistic, to have an optimism, because I think the reverse, if you're pessimistic about it, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy really. The more people that can be optimistic about something actually working and something coming to pass, the more chance there is of that actually coming to pass. Whereas the more people that think, "Nah, it can never happen. That's just stupid. It will never, that will never be reality. You've lost touch with reality. You don't know anything." And the more people that talk like this, what they're doing is effectively they're holding it back because they're another voice out there in the universe. To that's putting their voice out that say no, it's not going to happen. And really, what they're saying is that they don't want it to happen. Because if they wanted it to happen, they would do everything they could for it to happen. So there's an awful lot of pessimistic people out there that actually don't want this vision to come to pass. That's
Right.
actually what's happening when they're saying that they don't want it. When they don't believe it will happen, what they're really saying is that they don't want it to happen.
Right. And
Otherwise, they
I
would be embracing
find
and doing it. Yes,
right,
carry on.
right, exactly. And I found also within the many years of being vegan that I find that a lot of these people who are very pessimistic vegan advocates, I find that a lot of times they burn out because they see humanity. Oh, they're not changing. This person's not changing. My family's not changing. This person's not changing, and they have all this negative hate towards humans. And there are a lot of surprisingly, veganism is supposed to be a loving and compassionate way of living, and you find sometimes a lot of vegans really hating humans and being like, well, if humans weren't here, every all the animals would thrive and the environment would be okay, and humans should just like all die, all this like that's a ridiculous way of thinking, because the more we think that way, the more it manifests into what we think. And that's why, like if, for example, I say, oh, I'm never going to be a vegan, I'm never going to be this or that, and most likely it will be true because, I'm
Yeah,
enforcing that. Just like if I say, I'm not beautiful, and I look in the mirror, I'm saying I'm not beautiful. Look at how I look funny, and this and that, and
yeah,
whatever that reinforces.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No,
any
it's very true.
any anything that you
Well,
want to add to this point?
yeah, yeah, I would like to say on a positive note, because now, as I've said, I became vegan in 1987. There weren't that many vegans around at that time. I mean, we were a small community. There were really not many worldwide. I mean, I think worldwide we were only like a tiny fraction of a percentage that would stand up and say that they were vegan. Nowadays, there big things are happening. We have good reason to be optimistic that the animal holocaust will come to an end. I think it's very crucial that as a first step, at least, this is what we have to do. We have to somehow, all of us together collectively, stop misbehaving towards animals, stop abusing them, stop treating them as if they didn't have their own feelings, as if they were nothing but commodities. And I think that that is happening in this world. And we have good reason to cheer really for what's going on. I think that if we go back recently, there have been quite a few statistics about different countries that have been gathered. And I think that I read somewhere not so long ago that only about 10 years or a little bit more than 10 years, 0.5% of the population in England considered themselves to be vegan, whereas today it's 5%. There are huge things happening in this world. That's 10 times increase in 10 years,
Hmm.
um, which is something to celebrate. That it is absolutely really huge. That's not only in England. I think Australia now. I've seen statistics where it's something like 7 or 8% vegans. Israel's got a huge amount as well. It's really growing. I think, in all honesty, on so many levels, there are more people waking up today or woken up today to certain things than have ever been in the history of mankind. There are more people awake now than ever before, and more
Wow.
people that are ready to be woken than ever before. All it takes is in many cases just for them to have exposure enough to what's going on to make them realize what's going on. And this is not only about veganism, not only with the animal holocaust, but in the way that governments are basically have enslaved us all. And they're running, and so many people think that governments are benevolent and that they're doing work for us when they're not. They're actually working against us. They're working for huge multi-billionaire corporations which fund them, and they don't have our best wishes at heart. If they did, they would stop doing things like putting subsidies towards animal farming. If they did that, it would be a huge change in farming because they would not be able to continue without government subsidies. So I think that if the government would stop doing that and supporting the fact that they're encouraging people to uh, be part of the medical industry, so where they're getting sick from eating animal products, and then they're selling them drugs which cure with speech marks the whatever it is that ails them, and it's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide that's going around, built on us being suppressed and not knowing the truth about so many things, really. And I think that people, as I've said, there's more people waking up to this now than has ever been ever before in the history of mankind. And this is largely due to the fact of the internet, I believe, because more people are networking together and they're sharing the truth together and they're seeing it. They're being exposed to it in a way that they never were before because TV never showed it. TV is not going to show you it because it's not in their interest to show it. TV is owned by the same people that in the long run, the same people that have their money invested in animal agriculture and in the
Hmm.
pharmaceutical industry. So this is enormously great. People are realizing this. When I was a kid, nobody questioned vaccines. Every vaccine was normal. You go to everybody was sent to get vaccines. I don't know. I'd never heard of
Hmm.
anybody that said it wasn't a good thing. We all believed. We all believed lies. I grew up believing lies. We all did. We're told things.
Yeah.
It's not anybody's fault, really. It just this is the nature of the world. There are so many lies, and my part of my life, my journey, has been about recognizing lies that I've been told, questioning everything that I've been told, basically, and letting
Hmm.
go of things which aren't serving me, and encouraging other people to do the same thing.
Wow. So you had a great journey until this point in your life, and it definitely took a long time for you to really embrace veganism and then fruitarianism, and then of course eating
Yeah, as I said,
fruitarianism.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I had no awareness of it really as a child growing up. I think that I witnessed once my parents sticking a live crab in boiling water, and I don't know. I was so young, but in my memory, I seem to have this recollection of the crab screaming. I don't know if it did or not, if that was just somehow me watching it. But even though I witnessed that, and even though I kind of knew things about it, it never made me question what I was eating. It never
Yeah,
made me feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. So the fact that I mean, I was born in 1961, so 1987, I was 26 years old. So I'd gone through
that's
all my
funny.
youth,
26.
and
I went vegan too at 26.
there you go. What a coincidence.
So do you think?
So
So do you
yeah,
think it's? Do you think it's a destiny for someone like maybe they were born to become vegan at some point? Do you think in this lifetime we were both born, we were fortunate to be vegan, or do you think it was just because we awoken, or maybe universe God kind of just put down some kind of spell down on us and said, "You're gonna be vegan now."
yeah. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know about the universe and the way things run and that, but I have my beliefs, and I'm prepared for them to be wrong, and I'm prepared to be criticized for them. But I do believe in fate at some level, destiny, and I have a feeling. I mean, I am personally a believer in reincarnation, and I feel that when I came into this world, I came into this world to make a difference to the world, to make a change. I lost that awareness because I think that actually a lot of us, I don't feel like I'm unique in any way having this sentiment. I think that pretty much all of us actually come in this world feeling that we're going to make a difference. We're going to make a change because we know, I reckon that before we come onto this plane, we witness what's going on down here. We're well aware of the depravity, and we want to make a difference because we are good. Our souls are pure. We want to change things for the better. We want things to be. We want to help mankind out of this rut that we've fallen into. We want to help them climb out of disgrace because we're definitely falling into. We've fallen out of grace. We've fallen deeply, deeply into disgrace, and we want to help them come out. Now, I think, as I said, everybody wants to do this. Everybody has a potential to realize that that's why they came into this world, to help people, um, to help everybody, and to help uplift this world uh, and improve things for every living being on this planet. Now, I think I was very fortunate enough that part of my psyche deep down must have been struggling, I believe, all that time to realize things. I had a lot of smaller realizations in life. You've read my biography, so you're kind of
Yes.
aware of the realizations that I had, that things in the world weren't as they should be. And each of those things that I talk
Yeah.
about in my biography, really, I believe, helped me towards understanding that animal exploitation was not right. Having been bullied as a child, I that helped me become aware or have empathy for other other beings who are also being victimized. So I think that helped me there. So I think a lot of things did, I was a victim of my circumstances, but at the same time, maybe I chose my circumstances. I don't know. I don't really blame anybody for things that happened in my past. But I'm very, very thankful for things that did happen that helped me have that awareness. And I think that it was my destiny to wake up, and it is my destiny to keep waking up. I think that epiphanies can be reaching us at any stage in life, and they can just keep coming to us. And I feel like I've had my fair share, and I kind of like, keen for more. I want to know how I can do things to be a better person, to improve things for myself, to be a better person for my loving wife, just to work better in the garden and be more harmonious with people that I meet. Um, I find myself very often struggling when I'm communicating with people, because I get involved, as you are probably very well aware, a lot with debates on veganism with people who are very, very close-minded to the idea. And in the past, I have found that very challenging, and would have perhaps uh, not behaved in the nicest way towards those people, because I felt like, come on, why can't you see what you're doing is wrong? So nowadays, I do try to use compassionate communication more, and communicate, uh, try to connect with my heart, and try to connect with other people, and think, understand where they're coming from, and understand that there was a time when I may have responded in the same way that these people are responding. So I should have sympathy for them, and I should have patience for them, even when they can be extremely challenging. To not
Excellent.
lose
Yeah.
it with them, to not insult anybody, to not call anybody names, or I don't know where I don't always succeed. That's the truth of it. But I try to do my best, and each time I do, it's just another lesson for me, really, to try harder in future.
Wow, that's a great tips and learning lessons there, and definitely I can relate to that. Definitely, I mean, myself, the way I see people nowadays, and I can understand. Like when I first went vegan, I was very judgmental, very angry, and I was always like, no, you got to do this and you got to do this, and don't you see what you're doing, doing to animals and to the earth and
Yeah, yeah.
etc. And I realized from hearing a lot of different speakers and reading a lot of different books on veganism and other issues as well, that it is best that we speak from our own perspective in the I statement, telling our own stories, because nobody can argue with your own journey, your own story. And
Yeah.
that's really what helps me. And another thing that really helps me in my advocacy is to see the other person as myself, as I once was, and understand
Mm,
that we're all in a journey in life, and that we have to understand that, okay, that was me back then. So how am I going to get myself to awaken? How am I going to plant these seeds of love within that person? And because we don't know what's going on within that person, their mind and their hearts, and they got all kinds of issues with their families, and maybe health issues, and maybe they have problems in their work and their jobs, and then who knows, financial issues and money issues and all kinds of stuff. And then on top of that, we're gonna judge them and criticize and shame them and tell them that they're no good because they're eating and contributing to animal suffering. It's like, on top of that, we're putting more hurt and more all this anger and everything onto them, which probably they already have because society is putting all that on them to begin with. So even though
mm,
they might, lash out on us, and they might, criticize us and justify all kinds of, excuses for eating animals and animal products, you gotta have more compassion for them. And sometimes I just got this one question, And
Yep.
thank you for that question, Christina Petro. We'll definitely get to that. But if anyone does have any questions, please do uh, address them, because Mango and I would definitely love to address those. She says, how can I convince my family that I am not going to be deficient on a fruitarian diet? So basically, Mango, there are a lot of people probably at this time or another time when they watch this video in the future. How do they deal with family situations on a vegan and fruitarian diet or lifestyle? How do you deal with family? They're so close to us, and though they seem so far apart, how do you deal with that?
Well, that's an incredibly poignant issue, really. I think it is very challenging for a lot of families, and naturally, if you come from a conventional family that eats everything, and you suddenly awaken to the idea that fruit is actually our real food, it's a food which was meant to be for humans, and you want to try and explain that to your family, or maybe you don't want to explain it, but you just want them to accept that that's the path that you're on, that's your journey. It's very, very natural for people to think that to jump to conclusions that you're going to run into health problems, because from their perspective, all they understand is meat, protein, milk, calcium, uh, balanced diet, meat and veggies and grains. You know that they have these preconceived ideas already, and it's very, very difficult for them to understand how eating fruit could possibly be balanced or healthy. So I don't. I think it's a huge chasm for them to jump, to take that jump and that leap of faith that what you're doing is right. And I don't really think that we can expect them to. It's rather sad, but the best that we can do is to try and explain to them step by step. Explain to them first of all why it isn't, why they've been lied to, or how they've been lied to all their life to think that eating animals is actually part of our nature. If you can get them to understand that, because everything about us as a species is goes against that logic. If we look at how we are physiologically, anatomically, and compare us to other omnivorous species, that alone, if we can just do that, it should help us realize the lie that we've been fed. Because every single omnivorous species out there, and I know I've written about this in my book many times, I repeat myself with it, but I think it's incredibly important that we realize, because even as vegans, I hear so many vegans talking about the fact that we're omnivores, and so therefore we can eat plants, we don't have to eat meat because we're omnivores. But that's not true. The truth is that we are not an omnivorous species, we never have been. And if I get back to the comparative anatomy, you can start if you start in your mouth. Our jaws, they go side to side. Now, there's no other omnivorous or carnivorous animal. Let's compare us to mammals that whose jaws do that. That doesn't happen. Our jaws, they're comparatively very, very weak in comparison to the jaws of an omnivore. Our teeth are nothing like the sharpness and that kind of clamp that you get with an omnivorous animal. Even the saliva on our tongue is much more alkaline. Now, the stomach acids within the stomach of an omnivore animal are so acidic they can break down feather and fur and bones that get in there. If we tried to do the same thing, we would have we just couldn't do that. You know, the only way that we can exist on a flesh diet is by first of all cooking it and cutting it up into tiny pieces. And this is not something that very omnivoristic, if that's a word. So, but continuing on with the anatomy, if we go down to the colon, we'll see that every single omnivore on the planet has a short colon. And that's really a beautiful design. If you're going to be eating meats and such heavy things, you want them to pass through very quickly. So they pass through that colon very quickly. Humans, they've got an extremely long it's twisted, it's puckered, lot of pockets in there. And when you're eating things like meat and or if anything else that gets digested which shouldn't be there, they can get caught in those pockets within the intestine, which is why people end up with bowel cancer, and that is because they're eating a species inappropriate diet. They're eating food which they should not be eating, and this is causing things like bowel cancer. So somebody who's been a long-term vegan is not going to get bowel cancer, and there are so many other things that vegans won't get too. But anyway, these are basic anatomy features. We're also lacking claws. Our fingernails are very fragile. If we tried to rip into the hide of an animal, we wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't get anywhere. We would break our nails. So these things, that's the first thing that should be, a light should go on to show. Actually, we're not omnivorous species at all. But the thing that really, really draws it home that we're not an omnivorous species is the fact that every single time we come across, if we're out walking, we come across a roadkill on the road, we are never going to look at that roadkill and feel, I'm hungry. Even if you miss breakfast, you haven't missed breakfast, and you come across and there's a dead raccoon on the road, you're not going to be looking at that raccoon and thinking, oh, I'm hungry. If we're out in nature and there's a baby squirrel that comes along and that squirrel comes close to us and we're eating a sandwich, we're going to want to share the sandwich with the squirrel. We'll throw it down there. It may not be the best thing to be feeding the little critter, but that's what people would do, because in their hearts, they're kind-natured, really. Everybody really is, or at least those that haven't been extremely sort of desensitized and had their brains and hearts so deadened that they can take the life of other animals themselves. Most people aren't like that. Most people, if there's a little critter that comes along and you're eating something, you're much more likely to want to share your food with them. Or even if you're not eating, there's not a single part of you that's going to think, I'll wait till that pigeon comes closer so I can grab it and wring the pigeon's neck and eat her. Uh, People don't think that way because we're not an omnivorous species. If any of these omnivores out there, the people that think they're omnivores, if they go into a slaughterhouse, they're going to have troubled sleep afterwards. They're going to feel, because they're going to recognize the screams of the pigs as they're squealing to each other, trying to escape being pushed forward in the line, which is towards their execution. They're going to feel that. They're going to feel that in their hearts, whether they admit it or not, whether they want to admit it. That would happen. And if they went away afterwards, they're going to feel a discomfort from that. And that is not something which is shared by any omnivorous species. So I think back to this girl, I forget her name, that asked this question. If you can
Oh,
make your
Christina,
parents at least realize that, Christina, yeah, if you can just make your parents understand that, I think that it would really help them to perhaps have less angst about the fact that you're eating fruit. Because if they can realize, oh well, yeah, Christina, you're right, things aren't as they should be, uh, then maybe you're right about eating fruit too. Maybe you're right about eating raw, because you've made us aware of something which we weren't aware of before. But
yeah, that's very
I
true.
understand. Christina, you really got my sympathy, because I know that it's extremely difficult. I think that I was very lucky myself, very fortunate. My parents accepted me for who I was. They accepted the changes that I made. And when I told them that I became vegan, there wasn't any big hoo-ha about it. They just accepted it. When I told them that I started eating raw, uh, they I could hear there was a little bit of concern with them, but they weren't that concerned. They know me to be a rational person. They know me that if I'm going to get into trouble, they know that I'll do something about it. I do look after myself. I'm not someone who doesn't care, who just goes ahead and does things without really thinking about what I'm doing. And my parents were very understanding in that way. They knew who I was as a person, so I'm very thankful that they were that way. That they didn't give me any hard time. And when I told them I was eating fruit, even after a while, they started to understand that fruit was actually the ideal food. They understand that it's a food of the heavens, really. So I wish I send blessings your way, and I really hope that they can gain that understanding too. and you can share it with, find a way to share your journey with them and not let them worry about you or try and hold you back.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation for that. And I just have a few words myself. And I
Yep.
think a lot of times it's the hardest with family because a lot of times, I mean, it varies with family to family and person to person, but usually people are going vegan when they're younger and they're still living with their families, or even if they're
Yeah.
not, they're very close to their families. And once they become vegan or fruitarian, they'll start to get some kind of like resistance, and they'll start to see that maybe they're drifting a little bit further away from their family, and then they're not so close. And sometimes it's okay if our parents and our families are more open to listening, more open to hearing about these topics. And one thing I really highly suggest is not just throwing out statistics and numbers, which people often forget and don't even care about. It's really trying to get to the heart of the person and trying to instill love within them, that I find that really works, especially when we're just talking about our story and our journey. And a lot of times sometimes you'll find that there's resistance within our families because they think, especially our parents, because they think they know us better than we know ourselves. And so they think like, oh, you need to do this or this, otherwise you'll be malnourished, and you're too skinny now, and you're going to be more skinnier you used to be. I get so many comments and criticisms from my family. Now it's less because of the fact that I've been vegan for almost 10 years now. In next year will be 10 years. And I find sometimes if parents or family members are not open to hearing it, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of people out there that are willing to listen. And so I don't think we should be focusing our energy on people that are really not wanting to listen, at least somewhat open. And so all we can do is, be an example, live our lives, be an example as lovingly and as positively as we can, and see what I've learned over the years from Dr. Will Tuttle as well as Dr. Casey Taft from Vegan Publishers. They mentioned that it is good to see the other people as pre vegan. So, understanding that at any point in this life, or maybe even another life, that they will become vegan, because we all eventually come back to our natural state, which is compassion. And essentially, we're kind of born compassionately. Unfortunately, the first day we're conceived, our mothers are consuming foods that don't agree with this, and that is feeding into our bodies, and then eventually we're drinking the milk from the mother. So we're taking in all the fear and the violence and the death and the suffering and the depression and so forth that the mothers are eating through their foods. So from day one, even though we initially innately have this love and compassion, it's suppressed from the foods that we're given, from the milk, and then eventually from the corporations that feed us all these foods, which come from our parents and our families, loving families, and so forth. It is heartbreaking to see our loved ones and close friends, sometimes resist immensely. And sometimes, if they resist and they don't really want to especially when it comes to friends, they don't really want to understand or accept you who you are, then maybe they're not friends. Maybe we can only do so much to plant seeds of love within them, but if they're not open or accepting of your choices, of our choices, uh, maybe they're not friends at all. But our families, we can never, I don't think we can ever divorce them. We're always family, blood family with them, and I think we're all family on this earth anyways. And so anyone have any further questions for Mango? We've been on here for a little while, but we did start off a little later. So is it okay if we stay on a little longer, Mango? Mango? I think we lost Mango. Uh, he'll probably be coming back. But if anyone has any further questions, I'm still on here and we'll be on here for a little longer. We'll hopefully come back to Mango. Mango will uh, log in back. Either his computer crashed or the browser or something. But thank you, Christina, for that wonderful question and addressing that because I think it's very, very important. And there's a book by Dr. Casey Taft that I really do highly recommend, which is called oh man, um, something about vegan advocacy. I can't remember now. Oh, Mango's back. But get his book.
Yeah,
It's through Vegan Publishers, and it's Dr. Casey Taft, and it's a very good motivational. I can't remember the title, but anyways, it's motivational something for vegan advocacy or something like that. Um, and that is precisely the great work that he's doing and the great company that he's built, Vegan Publishers, that published a second edition of Mango's book, Destination Eden. So I highly recommend that book. If I remember, I'll try to add that resource to the description. Um, uh, are you okay? Everything okay on your end, Mango?
yeah. First of all, my computer froze. I don't know what was happening because I wasn't even using it. And the last thing I heard from you was about Casey telling people, encouraging people to treat everybody as pre-vegans, which is I thoroughly agree
Yes.
with.
Well, that's
And then
basically
after
right.
that, it went blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah, after that, your voice just cut out, and then I realized my computer had frozen, so I rebooted it,
Okay.
and
Okay. That's good.
I've only as you know, I've just come
I
back.
just
So
I just wanted to let you know because we started off a little bit later. If you don't mind staying a
yes,
little longer, maybe for some questions or anything else you might have.
absolutely. No,
But so
I'm
don't.
quite happy to do that.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, don't forget to visit Mango's website if you want to learn more about him and his work and get his books. I really highly recommend getting his books. This is a vital message. I think it goes even beyond what veganism really is based on, which is compassion, and it's an extension of this compassion and love that we instill for all life. And I think it really your book Mango was probably like at a similar time that I was reading The World Peace Died by Dr. Will Tuttle. Both of you are
Okay.
just like totally incredible in your writing, but you have this knack, this knack of writing. Tell us, I don't know, some kind of unique writing that I find like sometimes you add in a little bit humor here and there, and you add in some stories of like sadness, but then you kind of add in humor to that. And you really like I really enjoyed all your books, but especially Destination Eden, going into this one story going into the life of a dairy cow and the baby. Um, what is it like to actually write and to be able to bring that out to an audience?
Hmm. Well, I think I mentioned it in Destination Eden, but that particular story, which I've called My Life as a Cow, is actually
Right.
based on a true story. So I met the fellow it happened to. In the story, there's one man called who's referred to as the gentle one, and the cow believes that this man is on her side in some ways and will help her. but it turns out that he's kind of like everybody else, really. That he's working in the dairy industry, and this was actually one of the cows which many might consider to be quite lucky as far as cows are concerned, because she got to spend a lot of her time outside, and spent a little time with her. Actually, she didn't really spend any time with her offspring, but in some ways, she was sort of more. She was one of these free range cows, and what the cow did. I know you haven't asked me specifically to talk about this, but that cow showed her intelligence by realizing that it was time for her to give birth, and she went into the forest and gave birth to her offspring, to her calf. Um, Quite clearly, she did this because she had already experienced that when her calf was born, he or she was taken off of her immediately afterwards. So, in order to prevent that from happening, she tried to hide herself and hide her calf. She actually left her calf in the forest, returned to the herd, and in her mind, she must have been thinking, well, nobody knows that I've had a baby, so they'll never find the baby. But of course, humans, they're very well aware that she was pregnant, and they knew, because this happens sometimes in the dairy industry, that the cow had hidden her calf. So they waited until the afternoon, when the cow meandered back into the forest to find her baby and to give her baby milk. And at that point, they just followed her and captured the baby and stole it. I mean, it's a very horrific story, but it's a very true story. And I think there is an awful lot of horror, really, that's in this whole traumatic holocaust of animals. And I think it's such a dark and miserable theme that I don't want readers to sink into depression about things. I want them to feel that we can make a difference as an individual, and I want to bring a bit of humor into it. I'm not in any way disrespecting the animals when I do this. At least I certainly hope that I'm not doing that. I just want to bring some humor into a very dark and tragic situation. Just actually, I kind of was influenced a little bit by Osho. I don't know if you're familiar with him yourself, but Osho used to give discourses, and
Yes,
he
yes, I am.
during his discourses, he would often throw in a bit of humor, just to sort of like uh, break the monotony of it all, really. And not so much in Destination. In fact, I don't do it in Destination, but in my second book, the Eden Fruitarian Guidebook, and also in my autobiography, I use a lot of Mullah Nasruddin jokes, which is one particular fellow who Osho used also as the butt of his jokes. And I kind of use him in there to sort of lighten the tone, really. And but every time I do try and make a bit of humor, I try and kind of tie it in with whatever the situation is that I'm talking about in the book at the time. I think humor is very important. I think it's very important to be optimistic, to be humoristic when we can, even though the situation is tragic, and to do our best uh, to not let ourselves sink into depression. Because as you're aware, a lot of vegans can do this. It's like we're talking to a wall sometimes. We're trying to explain things to happening that seem so very obvious to us, and yet the people that we're talking to don't want to know, or they act like they don't understand, or they go around in circles with the same mundane questions all the time, talking about lions and protein and plants, though, and things. So I think it's important not to be dragged down by that. Just let it let it run off you. Let it pass. You were asking. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, and it's not specifically what you asked, but you were talking about circle of compassion a while ago, and just how I kind of, I honestly believe that a circle of compassion should have no limits. So the moment we start to put limits on our circle of compassion, that's the moment we start to limit our own spiritual growth. So if we're just going to, like a lot of people would say, animals aren't worthy of being in my circle of compassion, they're not. I care about humans, not animals, and they're part of this whole Holocaust, which is as I keep repeating myself, is one of the most sort of abominable things happening in the world at the moment. But once they can sort of expand that circle of compassion to embrace animals and no longer keep financing their incarceration and their exploitation, I think that's when their own spiritual growth starts to happen as well. They start to expand their mind, they start to expand their spirit, and I think a lot of vegans, they get stuck on plants not being having any value, and it doesn't matter what we do to plants because, well, they know that they don't have a brain and central nervous system, therefore they can't possibly be in any way experiencing life
So
in
do
the
you
same.
think, I'm going to cut you off there. Do you think that plants do have some kind of feeling or do have some kind of awareness that they're being eaten? Like fruits, for example?
Uh,
Because some people claim that fruits are like the babies of the tree. And then, for example, if we cut into an apple and we see the seeds, those are literally the babies. So we're eating like a fruit, which is a baby off a tree. What do you think about 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 addressing that question of
yeah,
how
yeah.
do
I'm
actually
very happy to
plants,
address that.
including
Yeah,
fruits, like have these feelings? Like, what is your
yeah.
thoughts on
Well,
that?
okay. First of all, I have a conviction myself that plants are in their own way sentient. Now, I don't wish to try and claim that I have full knowledge of this and understanding of how they are sentient. But the truth is that I don't have any knowledge of how you are sentient either, Michael. I don't understand what sentience is. Sentience is something that I believe is within all life forms. So I believe that there is an awareness of some kind within a plant. Now, you mentioned about fruit. Now, I think that I want to make this very, very clear that fruit is something which the tree is clearly enticing us by. I mentioned this earlier in the interview. It's enticing us to take, and it's not because that fruit is not alive. It's not like as you said, it's a baby. You can compare it more if you want to maybe the womb, it's the seeds are what has the potential to live, not the fruit. The fruit is just surrounding, it's encapsulating the part of the plant which has the potential to grow into a new plant. So the fruit itself doesn't have any karmic debt. It's not needed. It's not needed by the plant. It's not needed by the seed. You can fully take out an avocado seed from the avocado, eat the avocado, stick the seed in the ground, and the seed will grow into a beautiful avocado tree. It doesn't need the avocado. Some people say that it's part of what it needs to grow, but there's no truth to it really. And besides, if there's an abundance of fruit, when you're eating something like a mango from under a tree, and there's like so many thousands of mangoes, and you've taken a load of them and you're sitting eating them, when you do have an abundance, you do have a tendency to leave a little bit around the seed anyway. You're eating it and you think, wow, this is so good, and you're discarding the seed, and there's some pulp on there anyway which may break down and compost in the soil and help the plant grow in some way. But clearly the fruit itself is not really part of the seed. It's not as if you go to a tree and you saw off one of the tree's branches, then you're clearly harming the tree at some level, even if it's something that you may feel is necessary to do because the plant is in some way intruding, poking into a shed or something, and you need to do that. There should be some
Or maybe,
acknowledgement at
or
some
maybe
level. You are
it's, or
harming the
maybe it's a
plant.
dead branch or something.
Yeah, if it's a dead branch, that's a different story. Because dead branches, I think you're actually benefiting the tree by taking it off. Because I think it can be putting
Mm.
unnecessary energy into something which it's got no chance of ever growing. So I think that some pruning can be beneficial to plants. Uh, old branches, dead branches, these kind of things. And in fact, what happens in nature is that you'll get a fruit bat that will land on a dead branch, and when the time is right, it will, like, it's like nature pruning the trees. It will break the branch, the branch will fall, or it could be termites in there or something else. But this is ongoing all the time. That a certain amount of pruning. But we as humans, we do tend to uh, prune trees, the leaves, branches that can be quite healthy, purely because we want fruit to come on the tree quicker than it would do if we didn't prune. Because what happens when we prune them is we are stressing the tree, so therefore it puts out its seed because it feels in some way, possibly, maybe I'm anthropomorphizing the tree, but it feels in some way a stress, so it feels like it wants to procreate before it dies, so it puts out a lot more fruit afterwards. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
I do believe that plants have their own sentience, and I do believe that they're very worthy of including in our circle of compassion. And I know that a lot of people will argue with that, but if you take it to an extreme, now I recall, and I do mention it in one of my books, and I forget the name of it, but there was a story that I mentioned of it's a true story. I think it's even got a Wikipedia page. Of this one fella who was with a bunch of students, and they were in the desert, and they came across this kind of big old tree, and they wanted to find out how old it was. So they cut down the tree, and they counted the rings to see how old it was, and they realized that it was the oldest tree that had ever lived on the planet, that was known to humans, at least. This like 5,000-year-old tree or something. Now, who isn't going to feel sadness for that? Because this is a poor tree just living in the desert, minding its own business, and suddenly these people that come along callously because they haven't got circles of compassion big enough to embrace plants, they cut it down just out of curiosity to see how old it was. This is akin to what people do with animals, where they kill them and cut them open just to see what they look like inside. It's a sickness of humanity that we lack
Right.
compassion, we lack empathy, and this empathy that we lack, first and for everybody does have some compassion and empathy, even if it's only for themselves. They don't want to be hurt. Most people have got some that they look after their family, or they're concerned for their family. There are certain friends, certain people in their life that they have feelings for and they care for. But beyond that, they don't really give a damn about anything that's going on in the world. And I think,
Mm,
and then this circle of compassion, it's incredibly important that we embrace this and realize that we do have a circle of compassion, and try to expand it as much as we can, and realize that there are no limits to it. So even if we were to embrace the concept of plants having their own sentience and their own desire for well-being, even if we embrace that, it doesn't mean that that's it. We've reached the edge of the circle of compassion. There's even more that I'm sure that we just got to expand our minds, expand our spirit, and expand our beings. I think this is part of our growth as growth, not only as individuals, but growth as a species too.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. That's beautiful how you explain it. And just to wrap myself all around what you mentioned, and really to get back basically to living the way we used to, and that is the way probably we lived back in Eden.
Mm,
And this understanding of trying to include more species in our circle of compassion, and including, the soil and the trees and, the sky and the clouds and everything, and just understanding that, what are we doing with each food choice and each buying choice that we are making each day? What are we doing? What
mm,
kind of harm, what kind of repercussions do those choices have on my own self and on the earth and on other beings and each other? And I found that every time I actually contemplate as to what goes on beyond, to get that item to the store, what goes into the. That's why I go further than what veganism describes, which veganism is just a moral baseline, like a starting point, and then you expand your compassion from there. I expand my compassion as much as I can to include humans, and for example, human slave laborers that slave away making our clothes and our electronics and this and that, and trying to do the best that we can with our daily purchases, trying to minimize our purchases uh, to only things that are absolutely necessary, and foods that are preferably fair trade, organic or veganically grown, things like that. So, one other question. I mean, I know we've been on here a while. I mean, I got probably thousands of other questions, and I would love to hang out with you for forever. But unfortunately, that's not possible here. Not possible here
No.
on YouTube,
Yeah.
nor will probably people want to stay on here for that long.
Yeah.
But what do you do in your daily life besides eating just fruit? Like tell us a little bit about how you clean, how you wash, how you do all this when it comes to, let's say, bathroom, kitchen items like cleaners, and what about your clothes? Where do you buy those? All these
Mhm.
things that kind of like non-food related. Talk to us a little bit about that and your
Okay.
ideas behind that.
Okay. Before I had the epiphany of veganism, I actually had already had an epiphany that I didn't. I felt that somehow instinctively I felt that it was wrong to be using soaps and shampoos. So I actually stopped using soap and shampoo maybe a year or so before I went vegan. And to begin with, it was a bit of a challenge because my body had been used to using shampoo 2 or 3 times a week, having a shower. And when I stopped using it, I did notice that my head felt itchy at times, and it did felt dirtier. But I felt to myself, well, surely every other mammal out there takes care of itself without shampoo. It just seemed to be something that was wrong. I've always been a thinker, really, a philosophizer, and there was something about it that rubbed me up the wrong way. It just seemed to be part of consumerism, really, that we had to buy soap, we had to use it. When everybody else out there, everybody else meaning every other species out there, uh, didn't need anything like that. So why were an exception? Why did we have to do that and not anybody else? Anyway, I stopped using them back there, and I haven't used them since. So I've been soap free all that time, really, since about 1985 or 86. I'm not sure. And as it happens, Kveta has exactly the same feeling. So we don't have any such chemicals in the house. We don't have any soaps at all. If anybody, we've had people visit us in the past, and we've always made it our criteria. If you're going to bring soap, then make sure it doesn't have any odor. But preferably we don't want them to use it at all. We have a washing machine now. Because we live such a clean lifestyle in so many ways, I spend a lot of my time naked outside. I don't really wear much clothes. I wear some, but because my body is clean, it doesn't sweat, it doesn't smell. This is fact. I know people, a lot of people that are eating relatively healthy and they're doing hard work, and they stink. I'm sorry to, I won't say any names, but I've got some people that friends that really they do, they smell quite strongly. And I know that this odor, which I know that I've had before in the past, but since I'm eating fruit, I don't have body odor. And there's no sort of like dirt coming from my body into my clothing. So the amount of time that I need to wash anything is very, very minimal. We have the washing machine on probably once every 6 weeks for two people, maybe once every 2 months, maybe even 3 months at times. There are times when we don't really, and I can wear the same t-shirt day in and day out. It doesn't seem to me to get dirty. It might get some dirt on it, like a bit of dirt, but I don't have hang up about dirt like many people do. They always want to put bleach on everything. because they're afraid of having a stain or something on there. I mean, I do get. I must admit, if I'm sitting eating a mango, it's going to drip on my t-shirt. I'm going to get some on there, but it won't be something that wouldn't be a reason for me to go ahead and stick it in a washing machine. I might just wash that area where the mango spilt and then have it on again for a while afterwards. Still,
Do you think? Do
as far as
you
my
think?
clothes are concerned,
Do you
sorry.
think substituting fruit, like putting that in your hair and skin and using that kind of a shampoo, do you think that is good?
Oh yeah, I was going to get to that. We do that. I mean, it's not a really a regular thing that I do, but there are certain fruits, excuse me, that are definitely very very beneficial to the skin to rub them on. If you've got papaya, the skin of that really good. Mango skin's really good. Avocados, if you've got an abundance of them, rub them all over. I think it's very good to coat your body with fruit juice and rub it into the hair. Lemon is a very good hair cleaner. It's just all the. I think I doubt that there's any fruit that you couldn't rub onto your body that your skin wouldn't feel extra smooth after you've done that. And for especially for us, we're very very blessed. I always use the word blessed rather than fortunate, because I think that fortune is beyond our control, whereas blessing is actually, I think it's a gift back from the universe. But we're very blessed here in our spot that we have a dam right next to the house. So if we have the fruit skin experience and rub it on ourselves, we can walk around in the sunshine for a while and then jump in the dam and wash it off. And it's amazing how smooth and silky the skin feels after we do that.
Wow.
It's a truly beautiful experience. But one thing I wanted to say, you asked about the clothes. I haven't bought
Mhm.
any new clothes for decades. I have bought. We occasionally go to garage sales where people sell things that they don't want anymore. So and I bought a few t-shirts and shirts and trousers and whatnot from them there. But I have more clothes than I ever wear, to be honest. I don't have that many in comparison to what most people have. My tiny little, I've got like 3 or 4 shelves with clothes on them, and that's plenty enough for me. I'm not someone who's at all into wanting to look different every time somebody sees me or anything like that. I'm quite comfortable with what I've got. I know. Oh, I will wear things until they can't be worn anymore, and if they get a hole in it. Krita, she's very, very talented that way. She's really good at fixing things up for me if needed, and she makes a lot of her own clothes. Actually, she's very talented that way.
Wow.
So she might get an old cotton jumper and undo it and do it back up into a dress or something. She's very talented that way.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of
I've
that's
seen a
what.
couple of posts of
Sorry.
from her with her knitted shirts and sweaters and stuff, which is beautiful, very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very very good that way.
Yeah, and we're gonna
She
have
enjoys it.
her on. We're gonna have her on Wednesday evening, Eastern Time, Canada. We're gonna have her on, so the same time, 8 p.m. And Brisbane time, it'll be 10 a.m. on Thursday
Yep,
this week. So it'll
that's
be
right.
nice to hear
She's
from
looking forward to it.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she'll
thank you. And
enjoy it, I'm sure. Yeah,
we definitely good to hear from her, but also to hear her
yeah.
story and hear her journey because I really don't know too much about it. She's supposedly writing a book now, so we'll leave that
Yeah, she'll tell
for
you about it then. Yeah.
yeah, we'll leave that for for this week for a surprise. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, we might end this. But the one final question for you, Mango, and I
Yep.
know this is a very, very difficult question. You kind of touched on it, but I would like you to go into a little bit more detail on this. In this world of ours, where there's corporate greed, either a capitalist or communist or socialist, regime, where animal agriculture is the dominant thing that goes on, dominant practice that goes on throughout the world. not just in the Western world, but everywhere throughout the world. More and more cultures and more people are eating animal foods. And on top of that, you have, as vegans and vegan advocates, we have all these places where they're selling animal flesh and animal secretions, milks and dairy, eggs, honeys, and so forth. And we see it in the supermarkets, we see it in the health stores, we see it in the restaurants, we see it, fast food restaurants, we see it, through our families and through traditions like Christmas and Hanukkah and Thanksgiving and Easter and all these different times and these places where we're causing, we see so much suffering, and people are causing so much suffering. And for vegans, at times, it can really seem like bleak, like there's no hope to really living any longer. And like, what is the use? I mean, yeah, we are one person that can make a difference, literally, because I see ourselves individually, ourselves like one drop in the ocean, and if that one drop is not there, and the other one is not there, and the other one, and so forth, there's no ocean. And so each one does matter, but at some point, I mean, you must have felt it too. At some point, sometimes we feel like we're hopeless, and sometimes we feel like
Yeah.
we just don't want to like live in this world, this crazy world. How do you cope and deal with this? How do you talk to people if they're feeling this way, like this depression that they feel
Yeah.
sometimes when they feel like
Sure.
they're lonely, they don't have the support they need, and their whole family's against them and their friends, and then there's them again, the bombardment through all these institutions that support the killing and use of animals. What do you say? What do you think about this?
Well, I think first of all, I'm I am I am a I acknowledge very blessed in this life because I've always been blessed with optimism. I've never really felt any depression. I've never felt like things are so dire that I'm never gonna or things will never get better. That kind of thing has never crossed my mind. I'm very, very well aware of just how sunk and how low things are. But I'd never say they can't get any lower because I know that they can. And that's just a sad state of things, really. Things can always get worse. But at the same time, I feel that there are noticeable improvements, noticeable changes in awakening of consciousness of people, human beings all over the planet. And I think it's always worth reminding ourselves of that, that even though governments are supportive of the Holocaust, even though there are, there are huge kind of movement that's pushing negativity in this planet, there's a lot of people starting to break off, realize that you're not alone anymore. There's no reason to feel alone. There, even if you're isolated, living in some village somewhere where you're the only person that's living the way you are, you can change that. It doesn't have to be that way. You can start something to make it change. There are things that you can do. Look around you. There are things that you can do to make people more aware. Um, you can join groups that can encourage you to do that. And if push comes to shove, and you're really in a situation where nobody gets you, and you feel like everybody's against you, then move away from that situation. If it's within your power, go somewhere else, because there are places where you can band together, where there are more people that do think in a more compassionate way, and that are enlightened in ways that you're still yet to be enlightened. They can encourage and lift you up rather than drag you down and tell you how you're wrong. Now, it all depends on your own strength of mind. If you feel that you've got the strength of character to stay amongst people uh, that aren't supportive of where you are, and you can do so without letting them drag you down, then eventually you will probably succeed in dragging somebody else up, because they'll see, look, this guy's optimistic. This person is healthy. Look at how they are. They're healthy. They're happy. They're going about their life in a way that I feel envious of. And they'll want to know what your secret is. And you can tell them your secret is, well, I no longer take part in murder. I no longer take part in the exploitation of animals, and I feel like it's unburdened my heart, and it's unburdened my soul, and it's made me freer as a spirit, and it's made me able to cope with things better in this world, and made me able to be the person that I am today. Because I think it's important to work on ourselves at the same time that we're working on trying to free the animals. Incredibly important. Always, whatever work we can do on ourselves is important. So I think that
Very, very good.
those people out there that suffer from depression, they have my sympathy. But at the same time, uh, I want to encourage them, do something about it. Don't just stay there. Don't just think that you've got no choice but to be depressed. You've always got a choice. This world is full of choices. Everything that you do is based on a choice that you've made. Everything that every moment of the day we're making choices, and we can choose to be happy just as well as we can choose to be sad. And that may seem like sad, but the more that we can actually focus our attention on things that are good things that are happening in our lives. So if we feel like that we're unduly weighed down by all the negativity, look around, look in your life, and give thanks for everything that you've got, that you can be thankful for. And the more you can do this every day, the more you'll start to notice that you've got things that you could be thankful for. And this is the miracle of it all, really, because this is the way the universe works. This is not the way a lot of people would believe it works, but I honestly believe that this is true. The more that we can give thanks for things that give us joy and bring us happiness in life, the more the universe will send us things to be joyful and happy about. Whereas the more we sink into depression and think negative thoughts, that's what the universe is going to be burdening us with, because it's almost like we're putting out a request to the universe. This is what I want. This is what I want. So we have to turn around. We have to be good to ourselves. We have to try and bring ourselves out of any negativity, whether it means running away from where we are and relocating to somewhere completely different. But that getting a completely different circle of friends, that's okay. These are all valid situations. Like, if at the end of the day the family, what all they do is criticize you, maybe at the end of the day you're better off leaving the family, because it's more important to have peace of mind than it and to have people around you that support you and love you, than it is to have people, regardless of what blood they share with you, that don't support you and that don't want to encourage you forward. You don't want people dragging you down in your life.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, one other thing
Yes.
I might mention, you just because you were talking at the beginning, your question was about how the governments are obviously so weighted in negativity, which they are. There's so many bad
Mhm.
things the governments are doing, they're supporting and they're putting their money towards. But at the same time, I mean, it's not that long ago that United Nations, which I see as part of that whole system of governing, really, the United Nations. The United Nations has put out a declaration saying that certain meats are considered now, like sausages and bacon or whatever, considered to be um, class one carcinogenics. Now, this is a huge step that they're actually admitting this. Okay, not many people have heard it, and most people are completely unaware. I still go to the markets here sometimes and see them raising money for cancer in their sizzling sausages, uh, trying to raise money for cancer. I've actually told them, you do realize what you're doing actually is causing cancer by selling that,
Right.
and they're unaware of it. I mean, it's not something that people are aware of yet, but that awareness is growing. It will happen. It will happen. Don't have any doubt. One day the world will be vegan, and then one day, those vegan people, a huge percentage of them will be eating raw. Eventually, they'll all be eating raw. They'll all be eating fruit, and we're planting fruit trees everywhere. It will happen. In a world
Uh,
of infinite
yeah,
possibilities, everything is possible
right. I actually
and
had that
probable.
question, even though it's pretty late now. I had that question that I wanted to ask you. I guess would be the last one. Is
Yep.
Do you think it's possible to be growing fruit trees all around the world when in certain parts of the world it's not possible, maybe during winter and stuff like that? What do you think about that?
Oh,
Like
oh,
the
I think it's
getting around
possible.
that
Look,
situation?
but the only place it's not possible to grow fruit trees is up in the Arctic Circle or somewhere. I mean, maybe there are
Uh,
such remote places, but I lived in Norway. People growing cherry trees in there, apples, strawberries grow there. There's all kinds of different fruits that will grow there.
yeah, but
Just because they do have,
not during winter, right?
oh, the trees are still alive in the winter. And it's true that
Yeah.
it's true during the winter people would have a difficult time, and that was another part of actually your Destination Eden. I strongly believe that at a certain point in time, if we all banded together and we were able to change the attitude of everything, at a certain point in the history of the Earth, it has been knocked slightly on its axis, such that we now have seasons. Now, I don't see it as a completely impossible scenario that at some point it straightens itself back up again. If it
Mhm.
I don't know. I know that I open myself up to ridicule when I talk about these things because people just very dismissive of anything that doesn't really fall into what they already
Yeah,
see
but
as being
we're
realistic.
not really meant to live in up in the north anyways, right? I mean, supposedly tropical beings, so we should be living more south,
Yeah,
right?
well, exactly, but that was the whole point. With really was if the Earth were ever to straighten itself back up again, we could have tropics up in the poles as well. It'll be
Yeah.
tropical everywhere. But yeah, meanwhile,
Try explaining that to flat earthers.
yeah, well,
Even
flat
even though
earthers got their own theory.
even though I question both, so I'm a guy that questions,
Yeah,
you know what I
I
mean?
think it's good to question. It's good to question everything. Question everything.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Everything that I've said. Question it.
if you don't evolve, you dissolve, as Dr. Bill Tuttle says.
Good one. Yeah.
Oh, so
Nice one.
thank you so much for being on here, Mango. It's been a wonderful
No, it's been a pleasure.
interview
Uh,
and
uh,
chat. Do you have any
yeah.
further things that you want to add?
No, I'm actually quite keen to move on now with my day. I feel like my voice is getting dried out. I
Okay.
need to drink some
Thank you
juice.
so much
But it's been lovely
for
chatting with you. And if you feel like you would like another chat in the future, we can do this again sometime.
Yep, thank you so much. Have a amazing day. I guess it's afternoon there for you or something now. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
it's about
again
20 past
for
12.
being
Yep.
yeah, thank you so much again for being here, Mango, and for everybody being on
Thank
the
you, Michael.
line. Just a few more announcements before we end this conversation. Once again, Mango Wadzak is the author of 3 books, including Destination Eden, which is there's a first edition with quirky kind of quotes on the side of each page, and then the second edition, which is published through veganpublishers.com, I believe, and you can definitely get those and his new or his second book, which is the Eden Centurion Guidebook, which I wonderfully wrote one of the forwards to. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you.
And another announcement again. As we were discussing a little bit about politics and governments and things, I do touch a lot on that in my newest book, Our Path to Freedom: How We Can Live a Freer and More Peaceful Life. And I really highly recommend this is the third book and the final book in the series, the trilogy series of the interconnectedness of life. So do get that. It's right now in pre-order, so you can get a special Kindle price for that on Amazon, as well as you can get it through weareinterconnected.com. That's about it. Once again, I thank Mango and everyone for being on here, and anyone who's going to listen to this at any other time. Thank you, 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 thank you so much. And don't forget,
Yep.
like this video because I know you love Mango Wadza. He's an amazing being, an amazing this overall guy, and get his books. Don't forget, get his books at fruitnut.net. The link is down in the description, as well as subscribing to this YouTube channel and sharing this video around. Once again, I'm Michael Anfield, and thank you for joining us here today. We are interconnected.com, signing off. Bye bye, everyone.